Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. Could I first of all start with some general housekeeping? First of all, the fire exits are the two that are on my left-hand side, on your right-hand side as you're looking forward to the room. There's also one at the end of the corridor where the lavatories are, and of course the entrance door that you came in. There are no tests down for today, so if you hear the alarm go off, that means that we will vacate the building. And if you're unsure of where to go, then just follow this lot because they will run really fast. And we'll congregate in the car park and we'll all stand there and wait for the beefy fireman to arrive. Well, that's what you said, the beefy fireman. That's what you told me. So that's that bit done. Next, could I please ask you to, your mobile phones and devices, could I ask you to switch them to silent or switch them off? If you decide that you'd rather do your business and interrupt my meeting, it is a £10 fine to the chairman's charity, and that's not me as chairman, it's the chairman of the council. And the chairman of the council will donate your £10 to, I know one of them's Papyrus.
Papyrus, suicide.
Yeah.
And
Microphone if you're going to talk all afternoon.
yeah, sorry, yes, he's given me the opportunity to come in here. Yes, it's Papyrus, which is the charity to help families who suffer personal bereavements in family, not bereavements, suicides. And you might have seen on the Anglia News where 3 dads have been walking around the country to with celebrities to bring in funding, and also Mind, the mental health charity as well.
Anyway, it's a very good charity, so by all means leave your phone on and we'll get some money out of you. Okay, so that's that bit. Introductions. Let me introduce my team for the day. On my left-hand side, I've got Mike Horn, who's solicitor to the council, and on his side we've got Simon Woods, who's the high flyer of the planning department. He's got such a big title, I'm not going to even try and do that one. On my right-hand side, my right-hand woman is Rebecca Collins, Head of Development Management. On her right is Chris Hobson, Principal Development Planner. I've got other officers joining me through the day, Naomi Minto, Matthew Blackie and Barbara Greengrass. And I've also got Becky Harris, who's my usher for today, who saw you all into the building, I would hope. And she's also a planning support officer. And in front of us, we've got Julie Britton from Development Services, who will be minuting and controlling us all day, which is her hobby as well. Procedure, as each item is called, I will ask registered speakers, please come in. Please come in. We've been waiting for you. No, we haven't. Don't worry. Take a seat. As each item is called, I have a list of people who have booked to speak. I will call you forward and you take a seat on the right-hand side. And the officer will give a presentation. I will tell you then when you can speak and your allotted time. And when your time is up, and around about your time is up, you will hear this, which is to tell you to sum up. Now, sum up is not another 15 minutes. Sum up is finish that sentence nicely, round it off. I will be lenient, but equally, when I've had enough of you, I have the major control function to switch you off and no one will hear you and I will talk over you. That's how I do. So that's that bit. Okay, so we're going to start the meeting now. First item, I would ask the members to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of October 2022. I gather you've all read them and you agree the minutes? Agreed? Thank you very much. Let me sign them off. Can't pick it up. Very good, Julie, thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda for today, apologies and substitutes. Julie, do we have any at all?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have just the one apology from Councillor Atwell, and there's no substitutes in attendance.
Okay, I believe that was a sort of a last minute one anyway. Item 3, declarations of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised. Are you happy with that? Good. Item 4, chairman's announcements. Well, I've had not so much a complaint, but something from members that has come to my attention that virtually all year, I have not told you how many sleeps it is to Santa. So I'm going to inform you today, it's 55 sleeps to Santa. Okay, so I hope you're all happy with that now. We've rectified a problem that's been going there all year. So now you're all up to date, and that's it. That's all I've got to announce. So no training or no important things, and that's that bit done. So item 5, requests to defer applications. We don't have any. That's terrific. Item 6, items of urgent business. We don't have any of them. So item 7, we've got local plan update. I'll hand over to Simon Woods, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just a couple of things to mention. First is in relation to the partial review. As members will know, at the moment, we're out on a Regulation 19 consultation, which ends on the 11th of November at 5 p.m. So that's a week on Friday. It will then go to Cabinet on the 21st of November to seek agreement to submit the document for examination to the Planning Inspectorate, and papers will be available in advance of that meeting as normal. In terms of the local plan full update, members will be aware that we've extended the call for sites to the 1st of December. Current submissions are on the Commonplace website, and we're also in the process of preparing a more detailed update for members to hopefully go out this week. Having it done a bit more professionally than just a side of A4 for myself. So hopefully it'll be more enticing to read. There's an all-member update session scheduled for 12 o'clock on the 16th of November. And hopefully as many of you as possible can come along to that. We would welcome contributions and discussions. It is going to focus on the draft issues and options paper, which is scheduled to go to Cabinet in January, and then go out as a consultation document. And we would appreciate member input to that document before it is finally agreed. We will be seeking to circulate the document in advance of that meeting on the 16th of November. And also just to advise members that the latest local development scheme, which sets out the timetable for both the partial review and the local plan update, is on the website for members' information. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the Director of Planning and Building Control, which is the title, are we going to get an update on the website every month of what's happening with the extension of the call for sites?
Any new call for sites any new sites that we receive through the call for sites extension will go on the website. We will probably do it in a single package just after the 1st of December when we know what we have. You'll be aware, as will other members, that we had significant technical issues in terms of putting them onto the Brecon website, so they will go onto the Commonplace website. I'm hopeful that the update that we provide in the next few days will just give a bit of clarity around that.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's adjacent to the local plan. It's an item that came up the last meeting. I think you were hoping to sign off on the Norfolk calculator for nutrient neutrality, and obviously, whilst that hasn't had such a detrimental effect in terms of applications we feared it might, obviously, will you be putting any update on that on the website and the planning portal, apart from obviously updating members? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, good opportunity just to provide some clarity on that. So the Norfolk districts have been working together with Royal Haskoning to come up with an alternative calculator to the Natural England calculator. The Natural England calculator was the one issued in March that accompanied their guidance and their advice around nutrient neutrality. What the Norfolk calculator does is refine the assumptions made within that calculator, make them more local, and seeks to ensure that we have an accurate indication of what level of mitigation is required for an individual site based on that calculator. There have been discussions with Natural England in relation to that calculator, and they are broadly happy with it. What we, along with other districts, have chosen to do is to essentially provide both calculators together with a letter of guidance from Natural England in terms of their views on the Norfolk calculator, and make them available to developers to effectively choose which one they want to use. The Natural England calculator will probably be more straightforward from Natural England point of view, but it may provide, it may require a higher degree of mitigation than the Norfolk calculator. But with the Norfolk calculator comes a small degree of risk in terms of the assumptions made and the evidence underpinning it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
Sorry to, the white papers from government have been delayed for various reasons over the last couple of years. And now the new Labour Note Department are going to ask local authorities, and they're going to encourage investment zones. Have we had any investment zones come through? And will Brecon be looking at establishing investment zones across the district?
Thank you, Councillor. It's my understanding that through the County Council, Brecon has actively submitted investment zones as part of the county submission. What will happen to those and whether that's a proposal that will continue to go forward through the new political administration in government, I don't know yet. It's been quite clear from the new Secretary of State for Levelling Up that housing targets will still apply at the moment, but planning reform is still up in the air. So there are still a lot of policy decisions that I think need to be made. What I would suggest you do is maybe go and speak to the Assistant Director in relation to economy and regeneration, and just get more details on the submission that Brecon have been part of.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, moving swiftly on, as they say. Our first item is a deferred application, obviously moving down onto item 8. So we've got 8A and 8B at Wellingham, 3PL 2020-1484F and 3PL 2020-14660. For speakers who would like to come and join me on the right-hand side, I have Councillor Ross Donaldson, the Parish Council, James Rivet, who's an objector, Stephen Ollie and Oliver Mundy, who are supporters, and Nick Moyes, the agent, and Richard Thompson, the applicant. If you'd like to all come and join me on the right-hand side, please. Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, I need a moment or two to be able to find it because I haven't got a paper copy.
Okay.
Is that allowed?
Yes.
While the other people speak, if you agree.
Yeah, I'll move. I will move you down to the bottom of the speakers list if that's okay, and take you last. Okay, thank you. Everyone else, if you'd like to come up, please. And that's Councillor Ellis, was it? Councillor Ellis, okay. Okay. That's settled. Okay. Chris, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Yeah, so as the Chairman advised, we've got two applications here in Wellingham. Members will recall the applications being before committee earlier this year in February. It was deferred for a committee site visit, which was undertaken at the beginning of March, March the 14th, and subsequently deferred at the committee meeting to consider further ecological information in relation to potential priority habitat sites near the site and potential implications. So we're just going to go through the first application, so item 8A, which relates to the proposed dairy unit first. So in terms of just a quick introduction, we can get a picture there of the site by the red dot. So there we can see the application site in relationship to the village of Wellingham, the A1065, the Swaffham Road running due east, Weasenham, St Peter, and Weasenham All Saints again to the west. So I'll just move on to the proposals in more detail shortly, but you'll see from the report and description, there's the proposed dairy unit, which comprises a number of structures and associated buildings. I'll move on into more detail on those in a short while when we go through the proposals, but just to give a further idea of, where we are, you'll remember the site visit, the rural lanes to and from the site. So we've got the village of Wellingham due north, so that's approximately 1 kilometre due north. The main part of the village of Tittershall is about 1.4 kilometres due east. And as mentioned, we've got the Swaffham Road, the A1065 running there, and the further villages beyond. You'll get an idea of the character of the area, very rural, largely agricultural in use. We've got the solar farms you can see due south. More detail on the site, we've got Heath Lane that connects the A1065 to the Tittershall. Got the street here, which, as you've seen, runs to the village of Wellingham to the north. And here we've got the sites of the proposed dairy unit itself, plus item 8B in terms of the proposed farm workers dwelling next door to the north. You'll see in terms of the objections raised, we have a significant number, and many of those relate to impacts in terms of how the use would impact on the appreciation, context, character of the countryside, but particularly in terms of the heath. We've got Wellingham and Tittershall Heath to the south, which is well used by the local community. It's the site, we can see the dairy unit here, so it's that L-shaped here. The blue lines show land in the, apologies, the blue land shows other land in the application's ownership. In terms of more context from the site itself, so this is the view north along the street. So the actual application site for the dairy unit is beyond those trees here. In the open field, we've got a beet pad here, and access existing. So view along the southern boundary of the site, mature hedgerows and trees along it. And there we've got the view southwards from the street, again back the other way, so the site is beyond the hedgerow here. And again, that's the view due west. So we've got the pylons here, cross further west to the proposed unit. See largely flat open site, and there we can see the southern boundary, eastern boundary. That's the view north, so we can see in the distance hedgerows. The unit itself would be in front of us with the proposed farm workers dwelling beyond. Again, that's a view northwest from the southeast corner of the site, so you get an idea of the landscape. So yeah, in terms of the proposals, there's a number of aspects to it. So the proposed dairy unit is here, this L-shaped. So largest structure is the proposed cattle house, which is approximately 66 metres long, 27.6 metres wide, and 9.8 metres to the ridge. So that's running due north-south. Other structures, we've got the milking parlour here, feed area in between, so that's an open area. Other structures include a straw yard, general purpose storage building, feed stores, and we've got the silage clamps due south here, and the slurry lagoon due west of the unit. We've got the electric pylon, you can see running northeast to southwest. More detail on the yard there. So we've obviously got the street running due east of here, hedgerows to the north, south, open fields to the west. So in terms of the elevations, you'll see that generally a conventional appearance for these type of structures and buildings. We've got the largest building here on the left. So this is the view from the south. We've got the open feed area, and then you've got the parlour building here. That's the view from the west. So this middle image, so you can see the straw yard here. So that's the view west. And again, that's the view from the east, from the street. So we've got the parlour here with the larger building beyond. And that's images of sections through the silage clamp. So this top one from the south, you'll see the parlour building beyond. So we've got the bund. And again, this is the view from the street. So from the east, we've got the silage clamps, the general purpose store building. And that's the plan of the slurry lagoon. So that's it's approximately 65 metres from the crest in terms of length and 45 in width. And that's the sections of the lagoon. You'll see the bunds from either side. Obviously the excavation down to create the lagoon, and then fencing along the top. So similar to the ones you saw on site in High House Farm. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the application itself, you'll see from the committee report, there's been a controversial application locally. There's been obviously strong objections from the parish council. There's also been a large number of objections, 56 to the scheme as originally submitted, 12 further following reconsultation. In terms of the Wellingham Parish Council objections, they're set out in the report, but they largely centre on the impact of the proposed use of the dairy unit on both the wildlife character of the area, odour impacts on the surrounding community, impacts on traffic, how those would impact on the noise and disturbance of the village, and generally how it sits within a kind of rural context, a village which is historic in character and form. There's also concerns about, as I said, in terms of the adequacy of the highway network. And that is a kind of theme that the Litcham Parish Council have concerns about too, in terms of how the construction vehicles would access the site, but also in terms of any HGV movements during the operation. So, and those kind of comments and issues are mirrored in the community responses we've received. But we've also had 6 representations in support. And 2 further following consultation. So I'll kind of move through the issues as set out in the report in more detail. Obviously, in terms of the principle, obviously a rural location, policies in the local plan, ECO4 support rural economic development such as this, and that is also replicated in the NPPF. You'll note from the report that there'll be, again, in terms of rural employment, so we envisage approximately 3 full-time equivalent employees. There's also impacts, obviously, from a loss of arable land, but having regard to the loss in terms of the amount, the kind of quality of it, it might, you know, it falls within the best and most versatile, broader category, but noting that there are higher levels of quality to that. Also the amount of loss, it's not considered that would be harmful to the supply of land in the district. Noted the kind of landscape considerations in terms of impacts, particularly from the east to the south, obviously from the street as well, well-used route to the village. Now the application's been supported by a landscape visual impact assessment, and that's been reviewed by officers. In broad terms, obviously the site from a localized aspect, from immediately in front of the site, the street, there will clearly be an impact. But as from the images you've seen from the photos, there's a good structure to the landscaping, hedgerows and mature trees generally are on the edges of the site, but also in the surrounding area. So as you move along Heath Lane and the street, in terms of the impacts, it'll be localized to the site itself. In broad terms, there will be glimpses from a longer distance views, but they'll be softened, albeit obviously lost during the winter seasons. But as you'll see from the report, it's not considered that would be resulting riding harm to the landscape. In terms of other aspects, you'll see also from the report, impacts from odour and amenity were a common issue. Now, again, the application has been supported by an odour assessment, both and that has considered both impacts from a residential point of view, but obviously the recreational impacts as well. And so you'll see from the plan there, this kind of mapping analysis. So we've got the site here, the lagoon. So we'll see in terms of the kind of levels here, they obviously dissipate as we move out from the site. Now, the villages of Wellingham is approximately 1 kilometre north, so past this top edge of the slide here. The nearest properties are approximately 1 kilometre due north. Also, in terms of the village of Tittershall to the east, that's also approximately in excess of 1 kilometre, about 1.4 kilometres. So impacts in terms of the residential aspects are not considered to be significant. They're well below the kind of levels here of 3 OD units per metre cubed, which kind of you can see finishes about here, moving north, but obviously here from an eastern perspective. So obviously there will be no noticeable impact kind of to the south on the heaths as we sit here, but those impacts aren't considered to be significant in terms of the kind of low sensitivity receptors in terms of kind of its use as a recreational route. There's no public right of way or similar route as that through that. So in terms of the odour impacts, as set in the report, they're not considered to be significant and contrary to the local plan policy COM 03. Obviously touched on highways and traffic impacts. So you'll noted from the report that the network there, the street and Heath Lane, rural lanes, limited width. You'll also note that the Highways Authority have raised no objections. Officers have recommended a number of conditions as requested. In terms of movements and concern from the local community, it's noted that there's essentially 1 milk tanker every 1 or 2 days. So officers use that is not significant. Again, in terms of further HGV traffic, that's estimated to be 1 every 2 months for feed. And again, will be a tractor and a trailer delivery every day. But in overall numbers, it's not considered to be significant and harmful to the function of the highway network. Now the applicants proposed highway improvement works at the junction of Heath Lane and the street, and those will be secured by condition number 7. We've also got condition number 6, which seeks to control the traffic during construction. But you'll also see more recent amendments have been made to the, I'll move through this, to the highway access points here. So they're now amended to restrict movement northwards, so access would be from the south and the Heath Lane route, and that's both the in and out access. In terms of other concerns, the Highways Authority, as you'll see the location of the junction movements, the junction improvements here. You'll see that the Highways Authority had requested a condition that sought to restrict the HGV movements through the village of Wellingham to the north. Now, that's only from the guidance on conditions aspect is that kind of approach is only appropriate really through the management or the introduction of a traffic regulation order. So it's not considered that would be meet the tests for planning conditions, and we've noted that in the report. So having regard to the proposed conditions and mitigation off-site and on-site, it's not considered to be significant adverse impacts on the highway network. You'll also note there's a further image of the highway improvements here. We've got Heath Lane here, street here. So those improvements include improving the visibility, east and west, management of the verges here. In terms of further aspects and considerations, obviously you'll note one of the key aspects from the deferral at the last committee in March was in relation to further information we had on a potential priority habitat to the south. Now that we've had further submissions from the applicants, further surveys of those sites, and on the basis of that, the conclusions were that they don't form such a site. Now those have been reviewed by our ecologist and Natural England, and they consider there's an appropriate level of information. We can conclude that there wouldn't be an impact on priority habitats. You'll also note that the reports also consider impacts on the River Nar, Triple SI, and the River Wensum Triple SI. So those have been considered within the ecological assessments, and the impacts are not considered to be significant. But we've also, since the deferral in March, also had the issue that members heard earlier about nutrient neutrality in terms of the impacts on the Wensum special area of conservation. Now we've had further information from the applicants in that regard, and having reviewed all the information submitted as referred into the report, whilst we haven't been able to screen out impacts, we have obviously moved to the next step, which is undertaking appropriate assessment. And there we've taken into account all the evidence before us, subject to the proposals that the applicants outlined to provide mitigation land to the north, 1.6 hectares of land to the north for zero input grassland, and that would be secured via a Section 106 agreement. So subject to that, it's considered there'd be no significant impacts on those habitat sites. The ecological and impacts on site can be mitigated by condition. So those are set out in conditions 11 and 12. In terms of other aspects, see flood risk and drainage, there's be a significant addition of hard standing there. Obviously, there's various aspects relating to the proposed use and operation, wash downs, etc. Again, the application has been supported by a flood risk assessment and drainage strategy. So in that regard, from a flood risk point of view, the site's an appropriate location for this type of use. You'll note that the Environment Agency raised objections to the application, but following further information submitted, have removed that objection, and there is a condition 19 to deal with the further information on the Slurry Lagoon and its design. And also condition 5 requires further information from a surface water drainage point of view. The site will discharge to the ditch network that runs to the south and eastern edge of the site. So there's a further information required in that regard, secured by condition 5. So subject to those conditions, the proposals wouldn't cause significant contamination of the watercourses or result in flood risk off-site. In terms of other matters set out in the report, in terms of heritage aspects, the Historic Environment Service haven't raised any objections. There's not considered to be any significant likelihood of artefacts below ground on site. but also given the significant distance to heritage assets listed buildings, there's no significant impact on their setting. So just to kind of summarise where we're at, obviously there's been a few changes since the last consideration. Those aspects have been considered in further detail with further information submitted and assessed by officers. That's obviously led to the time since the deferral in March. But in terms of the recommendation, it remains recommended for approval. So there's the gains from the employment enhancement of the local rural business. Those obviously weighed against some impact in terms of the landscape from the immediate area along the street. But when officers have considered the impacts and those overall, they're not considered to outweigh the gains here. Now, I've touched on the kind of issues raised locally. Apologies. Those have had regard. We have had regard to those. It's been a controversial application, but from a proposed use and its merits, it's considered that the proposals would comply with the development plan. And obviously the recommendation is subject to the legal agreement to secure the habitat mitigation land, but also the conditions set out on pages 33 to 39 of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chris. Councillor Ellis, are you ready to go first, or would you like to go at the end, as I said? Ready to go now? Okay.
Amongst other things.
If you could switch your, if that's okay, if you could switch your microphone on, please. And can I just confirm for the record, Councillor Ellis, you are a member of the Parish Council?
I am indeed, yes.
Do you hold any office, Vice Chairman, or no, just Councillor?
I'm the chairman.
And you've been authorised to take this position?
I had by.
That's
Mr.
fine,
Donaldson,
thank
yes.
you. Not chairman.
Can you all hear me?
You have
Apologies from Mr. Donaldson.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Who
3
proved
minutes.
positive last night. Many of you have probably never heard of Wellingham, let alone visited the area prior to these applications coming before you. However, after our plea that a site visit be held, some of you did visit, which should have helped you better understand our fears. Your memories of that visit may have faded a little since then, but we are sure you will clearly remember the bad feelings this application has generated and the volume of objections against the very few letters of support. We, the Parish Council, have tried to present and support the fears and objections of the residents of our tiny parish in a reasoned, calmed way, but the applicant has found answers to all of them. We're extremely grateful to everyone here in planning who have dealt sympathetically with these fears, but we confess to feeling woefully let down by the various national agencies who we expected might have supported our objections. Lengthy correspondence backwards and forwards over the nearly 2 years of these objections, deeply concerning though they are, has actually only served to distract us away from the real issues. Objectors' comments have been ridiculed as being more of passion than of actual fact, and that any substance around facts was very weak. You have, we are sure, read the reams of paperwork in the application you've seen in the location. You've seen all the objections, but now has time to come to concentrate on the unarguable facts, not opinions, just plain facts that have not been dealt with. And then we go on to several more. It'll be an enormous industrial unit in all but name. It will bring no benefit to Norfolk or Breckland or the local area. It will provide no meaningful additional employment, provide no additional housing, affordable or not, for the Breckland community. It cannot possibly meet the declared objectives of this council to protect the best aspects of our unspoiled countryside. It will destroy forever the charm and attractions of Wellingham Heath, enjoyed by so many people. Surely it is our duty as councillors, each and every one of us elected, to protect our residents from damaging developments that bring no good whatsoever, to refuse this application. There are a lot of very angry electors, many of whom have not actually put pen to paper, that expect us to do our duty. We do appreciate that the applicant has a business to run, but we, every elected councillor around this table, has a Breckland village and its environment to protect. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. James Rivet, please, who's an objector. 3 minutes also, sir.
How's that? Right, okay. Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The decision as to whether to build this farm unit is a question for the discretion of this committee, which is put in place by our community and is charged with representing our interests. These are the interests of the community in Wellingham, which is united in its objection to this development. The proposed development will not bring significant numbers of jobs or affordable housing to the villages of Wellingham, but also Tittishall and Litcham. It won't bring back a pub in Tittishall or a shop in Tittishall. And indeed, it won't help the pub in Litcham and the 2 shops in Litcham remain open. It won't bring numbers of young families to the area who might in turn provide services or employment. What it will do is permanently destroy an ancient and beautiful landscape enjoyed by all 3 villages, not Wellingham alone. The arable land, which has been a feature of this landscape, will be built upon by industrial dairy units, concrete standings, and an open slurry pit, as we have already seen. I understand this council recently rejected an application for 3 dwellings in Brisley because of their visual impact. Whatever the environmental studies may show, they are inexact projections. There remains a definite possibility that it will bring environmental harms to Wellingham Heath and the wider area. As a matter of note, I do, with respect, dispute the distance of 1 kilometre from the limit of the Oder line to the first house in Wellingham. I'd be very happy to be proved wrong. The applicant, who I'm sure wishes us no ill, but does himself not live in the area, might argue that his development will produce food. But we would argue that this might be done on a more suitable brownfield site, should it be necessary. My father was, for many years, a member of the old Mitford and Laundage RDC, your predecessor, and I understood from him that his duty as an elected councillor was to represent the interests of his electorate, that is, the people who lived in his area. This development benefits only 1 non-resident farming business, with at the best huge upheaval and permanent damage, visual damage to the area. It produces no significant benefit to the community who are united in their objection to this. Only time will tell the true impact on all aspects of the environment. The only thing we can be sure of is that it will cause irreversible damage to an ancient arable landscape and is likely to affect the quality of life of those who live in the village. Members of the committee, our elected representatives, please support the wishes of the majority of the local electorate and reject this application. Thank you all for your time and trouble that you spent on this, and also thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. I've now got Stephen Ollie, please, and Oliver Monday, who are both supporters. You have 1.5 minutes each. Are you happy with that?
Yes, we are. Is it okay if I go first?
Is that Stephen Ollie?
Oliver Monday.
Oh, right, other way around. Okay, so off you go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ollie. My company, OJ Monday Farms, runs the existing dairy farm near Tittishall. I do this alongside the owner, Richard Thompson. I'm here today to explain why I'm supporting this planning application. First, a little background to myself. I was brought up on a small family farm in Devon, which was unfortunately sold. After graduating university with a degree in agriculture, I've been looking to progress within the dairy industry. Initially, I was employed on other dairy farms, and then in 2016, I was interviewed by Richard Thompson and given the excellent opportunity to enter a contract farming agreement with him. This gave me the chance to start a business in my own right rather than continuing as an employee. A contract farming agreement gives people who, like myself, had very limited assets or any opportunities to inherit a chance to get onto the farming ladder. This is a mutually beneficial agreement between the Thompson family and myself, but one which I was very grateful to have received. Richard and I have been successfully operating the current dairy for 5 years, and based on this, would like the opportunity to replicate this success at the new dairy unit. My wife, Laura, was a paramedic in the local area for 10 years. 3 years ago, she decided to leave her job and join the family business, working full-time on the farm alongside me. We got married on the farm last year and had our first child, Sophie, 6 months ago. Laura sends her apologies for not being here today. We didn't think it appropriate to bring the little one along. If it were to go ahead, this new dairy would enable us to double the size of our business. It would largely be stocked with cows reared and owned by my wife and I. The first steps to owning our own herd. We currently produce milk, which we sell to Arla Foods. Recently, the dairy at Tiddershall was given the highest standard of contract the Arla offers, and which will improve biodiversity, reduce carbon emissions, and provide the highest level of animal welfare.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I tried it to be, but we're going on for 2. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, I've got Stephen Ollie, please, who's also a supporter. 1.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Firstly, let's make it clear that I'm here with the applicant. I'm here independently as a member of the community and somebody who feels that I'm speaking on behalf of everyone who supports this or is not against it. But we all know that certainly the people who are against tends to speak up on these matters. Looking through the comments earlier against this application, it's clear I would have thought for both sides. To start off with, there's a lot of squid battered about. But from there, I'd also like to thank Mr. Rivet for his information he's put up, because that did give me a chance to get a balanced view of what's happening. At a previous meeting, it stated that Tiddershall Parish Council was against this application. That is not the case. I'm a member of the council, and the council neither supports or stands against it. I live probably about 200 metres closer to the existing dairy unit than anybody will in the village of Wellingham. They have a clear line of sight from my house to the unit. I never have any problems with odours, sound, light from that unit. Really is, that is about it, really.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Let's just clear you off there. Okay, thank you. I've got Nick Moyes, please, who's the agent. 1.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, everyone. As you've heard from the officer's report, the proposal is supported by both local and national policies that permit agricultural uses in the countryside and encourage appropriate economic development. Again, as you've heard, in terms of economic benefits, the proposal would allow a successful farm to expand and continue its good work. The proposed site was selected not only to provide good access to grazing land, but also to provide good separation distances to nearby residential properties. You've heard the distance of 1 kilometre to the nearest property. And it's worth noting that the distance from the proposed farm to Wellingham is the same as the distance from the existing dairy farm to the village of Tiddershall. And as you've heard, that's operated for many years, apparently without problem. The site benefits from good screening, as you've seen from the photographs. Visual impacts would be limited. The surrounding road network is made up of country lanes, but again, as you've heard, traffic generation levels would be low. Nevertheless, some improvements are proposed in terms of passing places and junction improvements. And the routing of the milk tanker would not need to pass through any of the local villages, certainly not through Wellingham. Proposals are supported by a full suite of technical reports, including matters of traffic, flooding, landscape impact and ecology. And since the application was deferred early this year, extensive additional work has been done in terms of ecology to show that there would be no adverse effects in terms of local habitats, but also in terms of wider impacts on nutrient neutrality. We note that both Natural England and the Council's Ecology Advisor have raised no objections. On that basis, we think the proposals are acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We've now got Richard Thompson, please, who's the applicant. 1.5 minutes, please, sir.
Right, thank you. We're a family farming business and have been farming in Tittleshall for over 60 years. The milk price at the moment is at record levels, and the reason for this is we're fundamentally short of milk. Dairy farmers have been and continue to sell up. It's hard work, and not everyone wants to get up at 4:30 in the morning and milk cows. We all enjoy our fresh milk, yogurt, dairy products, and at the end of the day, someone's got to produce it. We're very lucky to have Ollie, this young couple here, who are prepared to get up early in the morning, work hard, and milk cows. So I believe it's a well thought out project, producing a much needed high quality product, and we will be replacing intensive wheat and barley crops with cows grazing grass clover fields.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. Anyone got questions they wish to ask? Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's on page 14, Natural England. I'd just like some clarity on this, where it says, Natural England notes that the HRA has not been produced by your authority, but by the applicant. As competent authority, it's your responsibility to produce the HRA and be accountable for its conclusions. Be provided advice, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on to say the last bit here, Natural England therefore advises that your authority should not grant planning permission at this stage. My question is, have these concerns been addressed to the satisfaction of Natural England?
Chris.
Chairman. Yes, we've following this, we ourselves have undertaken an appropriate assessment under the habitat regulations. So in response to those comments, now that has been forwarded to Natural England, and following that, they've raised no objections, subject to the mitigation being provided, the 1.6 hectares of grassland.
Thank you. Any further questions for members? No. Okay, fine. So we'll take the vote on this singular item to start with, which is 8A for Wellingham, which is the dairy unit and all other facilities with it, which is 3PL 2020-1484, full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands for approval, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we go on to 8B, which is the accommodation unit 3PL 2020-1466 in outline format. Over to you, please, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just getting the presentation. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so see item 8B, a related application. This is for the proposed farm workers dwelling in relation to the proposed dairy unit you've just heard. So I'll just start from the top here. So you've been made aware of the location. Now the proposed siting of the dwelling is slightly north. You'll see from the site plan in a moment, next to the site of the dairy unit due north. So again, I won't run through this area in more detail again. I'll just focus on the site in more detail. You'll see here's the proposed siting of the dwelling here. So the application is in outline, so all matters reserved save for access, and the access would be via the dairy unit to the south here. So there's an access point here and then onto the street here. So as I said, matters in terms of scale, layout and appearance and landscaping are reserved for a later date. Now, in terms of the site in more detail. We don't have therefore any indications in terms of the plan form and elevations, but we can see the access here through the hedge there. You'll note that in a moment that there is already a gap in the northern boundary. So this is the view from the street. So the dwelling would be behind these trees here. We've then got the hedgerow along the southern boundary, moving on there. So again, in terms of the land use, open arable field, mature trees and hedgerows along the street frontage here. So proposed dwelling would sit here, and that's again the view the other way, so south along the street. So access point here. So the dwelling would be behind these trees and hedgerows here. So again, you get a feel for the character of the lane. And there's that gap in existing hedgerow. So the access would come through here from the dairy unit to the dwelling here. Here's that relationship. So siting the proposed house would be in this area. But as mentioned, we're not at that stage to determine layout and siting, but approximately in this area here. You can see the relationship to the dairy unit here. So the cattle house here, and the milking parlour with the slurry lagoon further southwest, and silage clamps here, the access point here. Now, in terms of again, the kind of this application itself, it's also been subject to a number of objections in similar kind of vein as the dairy unit itself. Obviously, just more in relation to the proposal itself. So in terms of the actual need for it, that's been questions that in terms of the impacts on the character of the area, etc. I mean, the parish council have raised strong objections again to this, and these again follow the same kind of aspects as to the main dairy unit, and they're set out on pages 46 and 47 of the report. And again, we've also received objections from the local community, so 16 objections. So again, a significant level. Those have been taken into account. You'll see in the report we've discussed the various issues in relation to the proposed farm workers dwelling, and I'll just run through those. Okay. In terms of key issues, probably you'll see from the main report that there's been a number of aspects changed, and as recalled on the last application since it was deferred in March. Probably the main one is the recommendation. So it's previously recommended for a refusal due to odour issues in terms of the impact of the dairy unit on the proposed farm workers dwelling. So you'll see in the kind of the headlines to the report that obviously now it's been recommended for approval, but key to that is a legal agreement that ties the use of the farm workers dwelling to the occupation operation of the dairy unit itself. Also in relation to that, there will be triggers in terms of when the dwelling is first started to commence construction, but also its first use as well. Now that's having regard to some further information submitted by the applicants and consideration and discussion with the Environmental Health Officer. And I mean, you'll see from paragraph 6.3 of the report, where officers initially considered the impacts from amenity of the residential of the farm workers dwelling, that refers to odour levels experienced all year round. Now, having regard to the additional information submitted and clarification from the applicants, it's understood that obviously for large parts of the year, the cattle would be on the surrounding land. So those impacts from the cattle on site in terms of would be reduced for long periods of time. We'll see the impacts would be kind of intensified when the site is cleaned, when the slurry lagoon is emptied. So you'll have those kind of peaks. Now, it's not having regard to the initial report and consideration. I think it's officers' views that you would need to have regard to the extent of that impact in terms of odour, that it's not a continuous experience. It varies over time, and for large kind of periods of the year, there would be an impact, but it would not be to a significant degree, which this kind of map here in front of you kind of indicates. Now, this kind of indicates that for 2% of the year, so approximately 175 days, 175 hours or 7 days. So that's the kind of those levels. They're obviously, as noted in the report, significantly above the kind of levels that we would usually expect. So we would set out in the report, we would usually expect a maximum of 5 odour units per metre cubed. Now, obviously, that's significantly further north than the proposal itself. So, but having regard to the actual occupant of the dwelling being in control of the facility on a daily basis, they'll be able to implement measures themselves to control activities when the site is cleaned, etc. That's why the aspect of a tie to the use of the dwelling is key, that they are in control of the use and management measures on site. So in that regard, subject to that legal agreement, it's not considered that it's considered to be an acceptable use in terms of the use of that dwelling as part and parcel of the dairy unit for the farm manager. In terms of other aspects, you'll see one of the other key things, obviously, is in relation to where this farm workers' dwelling is located, a remote rural location, but there is that has been considered against the relevant policy in the local plan, HOU 13, and officers recognise that criteria 2 isn't fully compliant. Obviously, being a new facility, there's not an existing dairy unit on site, but having regard to the proposals being part of the broader business in terms of the ownership at High House Farm, in relatively close proximity to the site, having existing use and business. We've also had regard to some financial information submitted for the proposed unit, and it's considered that the proposals would be a viable enterprise. So in that regard, the proposals aren't considered to be wholly contrary to policy HOU 13. Obviously, other impacts locally are the impact on the character of the area. Obviously, as touched on through the photos, the officers consider it being effective screening for large parts of the year. We've also recommended conditions that would limit the height and size of the dwelling that reflect its use as a farm workers' dwelling, but that would also help to minimise the impact on the rural area. In terms of access and highway safety, the Highways Authority have raised no objections to this proposal. The proposals are considered to accord with policies TR01 and TR02 of the local plan. Obviously, since the deferral at committee in March, we've also had to have regard to the nutrient neutrality issues. Obviously, this would create overnight accommodation, but the site is located outside of the catchment of the River Wensum. Having reviewed the submitted information and evidence, there's no direct link from the site in terms of hydrology and water courses. So the impacts on the River Wensum special area of conservation have been screened out. In terms of the impacts, we're also proposing to ensure the scheme and construction moves forward in line with the ecology report in terms of the mitigation scheme, but also enhancement to ensure there's in accordance with the policies in the local plan that there is enhancement through the development. In summary, the proposed farm workers dwelling is considered to be acceptable, but key to that is a legal agreement that ensures that is tied to the use of and occupation of the adjacent proposed dairy unit. In terms of other issues, there's no significant impacts in terms of the character of the area from a highway safety point of view and a wildlife and ecology point of view. Subject to that legal agreement and the conditions set out on pages 52 and 57, it's considered the proposal would be compliant with the development plan. Do have to note there is an error in the list of conditions. Conditions 15 and 16 should be removed. They were included in error. They relate to the archaeological scheme, which as considered by the Historic Environment Services, is not considered to be significant impacts from heritage on the designated heritage assets, potentially on the site and surrounding area. Subject to that legal agreement and conditions, the application is considered to be acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we're doing the rounds again. If you're wishing to speak at all, Councillor Ellis.
No, really, I think that it's all been said, and now that the toe is in the door, will we be sitting here in 2 years' time wishing to have a cow house for 500 cows and a small village appearing?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rivet, please.
Sorry, I can't get my mic on. You could turn yours. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing further to add, really.
Thank you. Mr. Ollie or Mr. Mundy, were you wishing to add anything with a microphone on?
Thank you. I guess just to say that the project's creating 3 new full-time employee positions, and that it'd be really beneficial to have at least one of those people on site to look after the welfare and the security of the site. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to say that with the house, one of the things which the existing dairy unit be accredited for is the high level animal welfare. To have the house situated where it is next to the unit, that will continue that. And you know, people talk about odours. People working on the farm unit is going to be used to it. You know, they're going to be with it all the time. That's not an issue. You know, I brought up in the countryside on and off units like that. And you know, your family gets used to it after a couple of days. You know, you don't think to worry about that side of things. You know, there has been rumours that this is the first house of hundreds. Someone tried to make out there's a whole housing estate being built up there, new village. You know, all the silly things you get. You know, we know you wouldn't permit it. Farm wouldn't want it. And that's not going to happen. And that is all really. That is.
Okay, sir, thank you. Mr. Boys.
Just very briefly, not really anything to add, but just to say that, just to confirm that the applicant has no objections to the suggested conditions or to the proposed 106 agreement.
Wishing to add something? No. Okay, thank you. Before we go to members, one of my little pet hates. Can I just confirm that the blue and the red land, the actual blue land around where the dwelling is to be built, is in the corner of a field that is not defined within that field when I went there anyway. So yeah, see if we get the plan up. So what I'm trying to say is that if it's shown as Thanks. I'm getting a nod off the agent, which is, if that is the land that's defined, then that is the land it would be on. And I don't want that to stretch any further. And is the rest of that field in the ownership of the applicant, then it should have been blue lined. So I'm having to go at my officers now. And right. Now, where the site is, you can't zoom in, obviously it's red and it's got a blue line around it, and up there, but not on this bound. Oh, I see, it's coming down to that other boundary piece. That hedge line in there is not. Right, okay.
Yeah, so the blue line runs around the site.
I
So
can see
it's-
it and the rest of the site. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm covered. Okay, it's just me being pedantic. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Anyone wishing to ask a question on this item? Councillor Wilkinson, please.
It's just the conditions, obviously, they'll be monitored and carried out, and I'm just concerned with the light pollution one, COM3. That is very important, I believe, and that really should be looked at. I know there's going to have to be certain lights for security, but I believe, that needs to be really looked at, and for the benefit of nearby villages.
Okay, I think that's covered off. Any other questions from members at all? No. Okay, thank you. So this item with regards to the dwelling for the dairy unit, application 3PL 2020-1466 in outline format. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I show of hands, please? And that's unanimous, Julie. Thank you. Okay. Right, we're going, well, I'm going to go by that clock, even though it's not right. It's 11:10. So I'm going to break just for 10 minutes. Members, if you'd like, just grab a coffee or tea or whatever, and we'll return